Jared, obviously, tremendous human, tremendous player. We wish him well in OKC. We think he has a tremendous future. Wish him well. I do want to say that I understand the reaction of the fans, but I feel like that comes from folks are excited about this team, and that's why we've had this reaction, and they should be excited. I think everyone sees out there we have a healthy Joel Embiid rounding into form. We have Tyrese Maxey taking a leap and a deserved all-star. We've got a bunch of guys stepping up as well. Kelly Oubre is playing his best basketball of his career. We love the bigs we have with Joel and Drum and Bona. We feel like guys are contributing up and down the roster. Coach Nurse has done a tremendous job, putting us in with the top few teams of the East in terms of how we're playing. And so, that's why we understand the fan reaction. The move, obviously, the big move was with Jared. Because we're playing well, we were trying to upgrade the team and add to the team now. That was goal number one. Obviously, no deal materialized, including using the picks we got from the Jared deal. We were trying to. That's why we did that move a little early. We're trying to reuse those draft picks to add now. We do feel like this deal sets us better in the future, but we understand that we were looking to add now, and nothing materialized. So, that is, and with that, I'll take questions. But I do want folks to know that, this team we think can make a deep playoff run is one of the top few teams of the East. We feel like that's still the case going forward. We were very careful to make sure that the core parts of the rotation were intact. We did the Eric move primarily was to set up what we could do with Barlow. Not primarily, it was the only reason, and allowed us to get a guy that we found who's contributing in a very good way, to not have to go to unrestricted free agency. We didn't think that was good business, so we were happy to reward him with a good contract and potentially something that we can work out even a better contract in the future with him, like we've done in the past with players in that situation. So,
Daryl, you mentioned that you were looking to add now, and you talked about the momentum of several players who are doing well this season, trying to build off that. You also said you understand the fan reaction, and a lot of their reaction is, oh, well, this was a move to stay below the luxury tax because we didn't bring anything in for that trade this season. What do you say to those fans?
Yeah, I'd say we were trying to add to the team, and we didn't find a deal that made sense, that we thought could move the needle on our ability to win this year. The CBA pressures were felt, up and down the league. To do the Barlow move to get him on a good long-term deal because of the first apron, we had to do moves to create that opportunity. But that wasn't the primary reason for the Jared deal. We felt that we see Jared as someone who is more likely to help a team in the future. I think that's fairly obvious. I think he has a bright future. We thought that the draft picks we got will help us more in the future and could have helped us this deadline, in terms of it was the picks we got were offered to many teams, and nothing materialized for a player that we thought could move the needle with those picks now. But we feel like going forward, those picks will help us build the team in the future, in a good way.
Players like VJ or Joel, were they untouchable? Were they foundational to your plan both now and later?
Yeah, with the hesitation that in the NBA it feels like nothing, things happen. We have some, as close to untouchable players as you might have in this league, and Tyrese and Joel and, VJ, Paul. Like, we like our core. We really think it's a very good core. Obviously, we need to prove that on the court, and I think lately we have been proving it to a higher level. But yeah, I'd say we have, as close as you get to untouchable.
You mentioned Paul among them. I think the general populace thought Paul might be movable if you could move him. Was he untouchable, and do you see him as being part of this core when he comes off suspension as in your postseason run?
We really like what Paul gives us, and in fact, one of the focuses was, could we find someone that while Paul's out for this period before he gets back for the last 10 games who can step in there, but we didn't see anything that would contribute more than Barla's given us. Then, obviously we've been, playing different players at that position when Paul's been out this season. Watford, you could argue, defensively has played there sometimes. So even Coach has gotten creative with lineups with Bona and things like that. I think Coach has done a tremendous job taking the pieces that he has and putting them in the best situation for us to win. And, we've been playing pretty good basketball of late. Obviously, yesterday was a disappointment, but yeah, long answer to, we were looking for maybe something that could, shore us up while Paul's out, but we like so much what Barlow's given us that we didn't see anything that would hurdle what he's given us.
Daryl, I guess obviously Joel kind of came out publicly and would like to improve the roster. Obviously, you said you tried, but have you and Joe had any combos about the deadline and about kind of what happened? Or anything?
Yeah, I mean, with all our top players, we update them throughout of both the moves and some of the potential opportunities out there. I think we all wanted to add to the team, and I took his comments to heart. I feel like myself and the front office were stewards of the team, and we're here to make the team better. I think we've done a lot of good things to get the team in this situation, but for this deadline, I understand the reaction that we didn't add. But I feel like if folks were excited about the team before, the same group that they were excited about before is going out there. Obviously, save Jared, but we feel like with Watford and other guys stepping up, that we can not miss a beat with the players we have on the roster.
My question would be, why trade Jared now if you didn't already have something lined up, like nothing materialized, you said? Because I think the argument that it was such good value, given that he's shooting 38.5% from the field this year, it's hard to argue that you're selling high on him. So there was no real downside risk of, you can make that trade at the draft, or you can make that trade at a later date if it's just about the return. So why make the move now if nothing else had materialized?
No, I appreciate that perspective. I am quite confident we were selling high. Yeah. Obviously, time will tell. But the only other high point, and we weren't looking to sell, I'll be frank. Like, teams came to us with aggressive offers for him, and you could say, yeah, that's because he's a good player. I agree with that. We thought this return was above, for the future value for our franchise, what we could get. So the only higher point would have been during his run last season. But otherwise, we feel like we did time this well.
Do you believe you have organizational alignment on what you need to do to make the team better? And what I mean by that is, 18 months ago, whenever that was, you signed Paul George to a max contract, you extend Joel. Everyone knows you have a win now window in the next 2 years after Paul signs that deal. And last year was what it was, but this year you have Joel scoring 30 points a game for a month and a half. Tyrese is an all-star starter. VJ exceeds expectations. Paul plays well. So it just feels like there's a disconnect between recent major decisions that the organization made and having this type of deadline.
Yeah, I understand. I do believe we are aligned. That's why I went through. Didn't get to talk about VJ. I'm glad you did. I mean, everything we have there is that he's on pace to be someone who's got a real chance to be a future All-Star, and he's playing great basketball, especially at ends of games where we've been in a lot of close games. Yeah, I think it's 100% aligned on. Obviously, we're in a phase where win now makes sense. I would just ask, and this is probably something we can maybe talk offline, like the opportunities that were out there, we didn't see any that moved the needle for our team. We just didn't. I'd be happy to talk offline with folks on which deals they saw that could have moved the needle for us that we could have done. They just weren't there. And so,
Daryl, while the Eastern Conference is still competitive, they are slightly more vulnerable with injuries like Tatum, Halliburton. When you take away and aren't able to add this season, what position does that put the Sixers in this year to try to capture the East?
yeah, we like our chances in the East. We feel like we're in the mix with the top teams there. Obviously, we got to prove that on the court. But yeah, I'm just reiterating. Yeah, we were hoping to add and we didn't add. So, but we still believe in this team. Like it's still the team that people believed in. Folks have speculated on the improvements of our East competitors. I don't see it personally. I think all the teams, made moves at the deadline, but there weren't any needle movers in my opinion.
Daryl, you talked about right now you feel like you sold high on McCain. Did you guys lose a little bit of faith in him?
I wouldn't say that. No, I think he has a tremendous future. I think, look, if you look, obviously, sort of the tell of people who don't like the deal, they'll leave off the whole return, minimize this draft, which we think is good, things like that. I'm not saying you personally, Keith. I'm just saying if folks who don't like the deal, they'll minimize. That return is for a starter quality player on a good team. It's actually above that. We do a lot of analysis on, how we think things will play out both here and around the league going forward in terms of the quality of play, what kinds of returns will return, what players in the future. And the bottom line is Jared's a player who is a great future bet and a great potential great player, and we wish him luck. We feel like this return sets us up better to set up the team in the future better. That doesn't address our team now. So we did want to add now, and it didn't happen. So I think that's a fair reaction. And then I think it's a fair reaction to go back to Kyle's point. Did you time this well? Is this a fair return? All I can say is we do a lot of work on this, and we feel like it was well above that and well above what will help us down the road.
Daryl, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Are you guys? I remember after you drafted VJ, you talked about the new NBA where teams have 4 guards. Are you still committed to that?
Well, that's a good point. I think what Nick does better than maybe any coach in the league is, and I think this is where the great coaches separate themselves, in my personal opinion, is takes the talent you have and figures out the best way to use them, both offensively and defensively. We had a very deep set of guards. We still do. We still have 3, our guard rotation of Tyrese, VJ, and Quentin, we feel stacks up very well around the league. The reason why I think we were playing a lot of 3-guard lineups is because Nick was like, that's our best way to win. But we were playing those less, frankly. I think you guys know that. And that was, again, giving us the best chance to win. Nick was looking for those best. So we were playing less of those. Does that factor in? It was more because you can go in and out of 3-guard lineups. It was more our path here is a little bit muted relative to where his path could be on another team. It would be hard for him to get to starter quality, which was the return that we got. Just to simplify it a little bit. Sorry, Marcus.
Daryl, you said I didn't see that there were any needle movers. That there was a blockbuster trade to an Eastern Conference team. The guy used to be here, James Harden. Does that mean that you don't believe that's a needle mover? Part 1 and part 2. How sustainable do you think, or can you say, is this Joel Embiid model that we're seeing now?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about specific teams. I'm just saying, objectively, the teams in the East, the array is similar of like if you were to look at, teams' chances before and after. That's just my opinion. I think people can have differences of opinion. In terms of trying to get to your second question was, how does it work? Do you mind asking again? I'm
The
sorry.
sustainability of the model that we're seeing him in now, and is this kind of the best you can envision, considering his injury history?
I see he's still improving. I mean, when I watch, obviously, credit to Joel, who's put in tremendous time and work to get to even the run he's gotten to. So I think we do need to acknowledge that and really talk about, and he's been very gracious to talk about the people around him who help him. But I think mostly it's the work he's put in to get to here. But I continue to see improvement. I know from my conversation with him that he feels like he's improving still. So we'll see. I mean, obviously time will tell.
And medically, have you been told that this is sustainable? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that, I mean, obviously it's, we're taking a little heat. We weren't able to add, so, I guess we're a little on our back heels today. But I will say, we talked a lot about, we thought that Joel could still get to this level and play this level. And I think there was a lot of very reasonable skepticism that that's the case. But all I ever had was talking to our medical staff and doctors, and there was a lot of confidence that he could get to this place if he puts the time in, and he has. And so I feel like that one, has played out in a positive way, and we do think it's sustainable, and we are excited about it. Yeah.
So right now, Tyrese leads the league in minutes. VJ is the highest rookie in minutes. You had 4 guys play almost 40 minutes last night. I guess, is there a concern about that usage, and also is there a little concern about depth because you're having to play those guys so many?
Yeah, we feel like we're a deep team. Again, people might not agree, but we do feel like a deep team. In fact, there were many people who were writing that we were a deep team, so it wasn't just our opinion. I do think Nick is arraying or is using our players in an optimal way to win games. For sure, you always want more good players than bad players. We still have 2 roster spots. We'll see what those, are still to come. Obviously, we're thrilled to use one of those spots on Barlow. So we'll continue to look to add in that marketplace as well. But, we do feel like we're a deep team. But even if we're a deep team, it doesn't mean that, playing guys how Nick is playing them is. I agree with Coach Nurse. I think he's using our players in the best way to win games.
Daryl, I know you mentioned several times.
Much again.
Several times that you tried to add it didn't work out. But how much of your approach to the trade deadline was the staying below the luxury tax a consideration?
Again, I would just reference, for sure, if we had found an ad and we were going to end up higher, we would have ended up above it. We've done it several times when I was here. Over the history of ownership, they've done it many times. We didn't see something that did that, and then we're under the normal pressures that every team is feeling with the CBA, with the first apron to sign Barlow to this deal, things like that. So,
what is the support like from ownership? An ownership that has vested interest in different markets. When you do see a move that you like that would put you above that tax.
Yeah, that's happened several times since I've been here. They're completely supportive. I think they ask, they provide all the reasons we can. They're both David and Josh are very engaged and involved, but in a good way, asking good questions, things like that. And when we're talking about, hey, here's potential deals we could do, it's a trade-off. How much will he help? What are we having to get up? Where do we end up relative to the CBA? All those things factor in. So, but they're tremendous support for us and appropriately involved is what I would say.
Daryl, you mentioned a couple of roster spots that will be open, I guess, in 9 days. Do you anticipate being a significant player in the buyout market, and does Jabari Walker factor into like a possible solution to one of those spots?
Yeah, Jabari for sure. It's sort of, not to reference our CBA we all live under, it's sort of like, annoying, I'll use the word, that, just how it all works, that Jabari can't play for some games here. But, yeah, there are, he's obviously, been part of our next man up mentality. I think Coach Nurse has done a good job, when we've had players in and out, which we've had less of this year, but we've still had quite a bit, especially with, the recent Paul news, things like that. He's been a tremendous next man up type contributor. And, we hope to have his services, going forward, but we do have to weigh optimal use of our, sort of scarce 2 roster spots and against the other opportunities as well. So, that'll be written over time, whether or not, we do that conversion there.
And in the buyout market, do you anticipate whoever the sort of higher profile buyout guys are that you guys can reasonably make a
I
point?
think we're in the mix. I think they see a really good team or a really good market. So I have, we've had a lot of conversations already. We're obviously in competition with other teams, so I don't know if we'll get the first option necessarily, but we'll be in there with, getting some of the top options, I think.
Daryl,
When
when it
is
comes
it-
to some of the moves that were made and some of the potential deals that were discussed, how heavily involved in the process was Nick Nurse as it comes to trying to form a team around his scheme offensively and defensively?
Yeah, we're sort of one team. I mean, obviously we worked together even prior to here, so he's apprised of every possible move. Both 2 days ago and yesterday there were a few that seemed like they were close, and he was, somewhat excited about if we had able to get it done, but didn't. So I think just like the front office, ownership, myself, coaches, players were like, hey, it would have been nice to add. We're all wish we had, but I would say the team that's been playing well is still out there and still in a good shape, and we feel like the future is better as well.
I want to touch on Paul George for just a
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
When you pay a guy over $200 million, he's a veteran. How disappointing is it for him to get suspended for the reason that he did?
I think no one's more disappointed than Paul. Obviously, he's talked to his teammates, front office, ownership. He wants to be out there fighting more than anybody, and he will be. He's going to come back and have a strong 10 games in the playoffs. I focus most on how a guy plays when he's out there, and he's playing tremendous when he's out there. Obviously, really critical to our defense, and then contributing, to your point, shooting. He was a big part of like how much shooting we had, and obviously playing 30 to 40 minutes. Really important part of the team. So.
Darryl, how much of the valuation of the trade or the incoming for Jared is getting a pick in this specific draft?
So that wasn't the main focus. I think it's a nice focus because we do think this draft is a good draft. But we're not necessarily using the pick in this draft. It could be used for moves around the draft. The 3 seconds that we got with it, we think could be used to move up in this draft. Could, that obviously I and our front office have done a lot of deals over the years, and this just gives us more tools to make the moves that we think will help our future more than we saw, Jared, who we gave up. But that's not a comment on Jared. That's just literally, we think, given our team, this was the right move to set us up down the road in a better way. And this core of this team is intact and will still win at the level that we're going to win before the deadline. We just didn't add.
What do you think is the biggest need for this team? Like, you said you got the core pieces, but now you got
In
two
the future, you mean?
I mean, you got 2 roster spots available. I mean, what do
Oh,
you guys
yes.
think?
I mean, we have 2 to fill. Obviously, Barlow was one of the signings. I think balancing it out with guard and wing might again, we really want to go for best player. I mean, obviously that sounds trite, but that's true. But you do want to focus on a little roster balance. In terms of adding this deadline, we thought, backfilling Paul was, a possible spot while he was out. But, I hate to repeat it again, and again, I'd love to talk on the side, like the players that were available just, weren't adding in a way that was material relative to what teams wanted us to give up for them.
There was a report when the Jared trade went down that Quentin was, you know, a guy that you kind of viewed as a, you know, you would like to bring him back. I guess after everything that happened, I know he's changed representation and all that. I guess, do you still view him as a guy that you would like to have long term?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we talked his representation quite a bit through this period. Obviously, you know, who knows exactly what the future brings, but we think he's a tremendous fit with our other guards, two-way player, and you know, we hope to re-sign him in the future. Yeah.
You mentioned that you had authorization to go over the tax, but it has now been 4 years where the moves at the deadline left you under. Joel recently commented about that. Do you ever worry about the perception externally and internally about shedding money at this time of year?
I understand the perception, and I hope to defeat it by finding a deal that, you know, I can go to ownership and say, we think this move is the right move to do for that, and create the apron issues that it would create. So, but I haven't been able to recommend that move yet. So.
Are you happy with the way they're playing defensively as we head towards the playoffs?
Yeah.
Defense.
We're going to have to be a little next man up. Paul was a big part of our defense, and obviously we'll have him back for the last 10 in the playoffs. I really love what Coach Nurse is doing, getting creative. I think we've really gotten to leaning into some of our strengths, you know, with Tyrese being, you know, high IQ, you know, able to, you know, force turnovers while not having to gamble too much. But that's across the roster. And I really think, you know, again, credit to Coach and how we've adjusted over the year. That's been a change over the year that he's realized how best to use our players. But we're going to have to battle. You know, we're going to have to battle. Paul was a big part of how we were playing D out there. So
On Paul, a lot of teams in sports, I think, have some sort of protocol where if players are taking something, they'll get it cleared with the team to make sure that there's not some sort of banned substance on it that they weren't aware of. I guess, do you have a protocol like that? And did Paul run whatever it was by you guys?
I mean, we absolutely have a protocol. In terms of more detail than that, I really am not at liberty to talk about.
With the moves, you had enough room to use portions of the mid-level to bring Barlow back on a longer-term deal. Were there discussions about that? And
Yeah, we were hoping to sign a longer deal, but what happens is, you know, we didn't know we had the Eric deal to make that deal possible. So it got pretty rushed, you know, and we didn't give up much in that deal. It was like a swap of seconds, but we were only going to do that if we had worked out something with Dom. So in working with his representation, we took sort of a middle path, which is basically locking him in for next year at a good number, but with the ability to maybe work out something even better for both sides in before we pick up a team option.